I never thought I'd find myself in a situation like this. My name is Jake, and I'm just a regular guy from Denver, living what I thought was a pretty decent life with my wife, Sarah, and our 8-year-old son, Tommy. We had the house, the minivan, and a seemingly perfect life. But recently, cracks started to show, and I was too blind to see what was right in front of me. It all started a few months back, around the time Tommy joined the local swim team. Sarah was super supportive, always cheering him on during practice and meets. But there was something about her that felt off. I brushed it off at first. Maybe it was just the stress of juggling work and family. But then I started noticing her late nights out and the way she would get defensive about her phone. The moment I would walk into the room, she would quickly put it down or change the subject. One night, I'd just gotten back from work, and Sarah had a swim team meeting. I planned to surprise them both with pizza, so I decided to drive over to the pool to pick them up. It was a chilly evening, and as I approached the building, I could see through the big glass windows. There was Sarah, laughing and chatting with our son's swim coach, Matt. He was in his late 20s, tall and athletic, everything I was. The way they were standing close, their body language, it sent a shiver down my spine. It was hard to dismiss the uneasy feeling creeping into my gut. But that was just the beginning. A week later, while searching for a missing remote, I stumbled upon Sarah's phone underneath the couch. I don't usually snoop, but something made me pick it up. I saw several messages from Matt, flirty, suggestive messages that made my blood boil. I had to put the phone down before I smashed it against the wall. My heart raced as the truth hit me like a freight train. She was cheating on me with our son's swim coach. When Sarah got home, I confronted her. "What's going on with you and Matt?" I asked, my voice shaking with anger and disbelief. She played it cool at first, denying everything, insisting that he was just a good coach and that I was being paranoid. But I could see it in her eyes, the guilt, the hesitation. "He's just being friendly, Jake. You're overreacting," she said, but I could hear the quiver in her voice. I pushed harder, recounting the messages I had seen, the late nights, the way she seemed to light up around him. Finally, she cracked. "Fine, yes, I kissed him, but it didn't mean anything. It was just a stupid mistake," she said, her face a mix of anger and defensiveness. "You never pay attention to me anymore." I felt neglected. I felt like I was in a bad dream. I had worked hard for our life, investing my time and energy into our family, and this was how she repaid me. It felt like I had been punched in the gut. I didn't know whether to scream or cry. Instead, I just stood there, feeling the weight of betrayal crash down on me. The emotional impact hit me hard. I went from shock to anger, then to an overwhelming sadness. How could she do this to us? To Tommy? I felt lost and humiliated. I should have seen the signs, but I had been too wrapped up in my own world to notice the changes in her behavior. I spent those first few days in turmoil, replaying every moment in my head, trying to make sense of it all. But then a shift happened. Instead of wallowing in my pain, I started to think about what I wanted. I realized I couldn't let this betrayal define me or my son's future. I had to take control, not just for myself, but for Tommy as well. I didn't want to wallow in the grief of infidelity. Instead, I decided to channel my anger into something positive. It was time to make sure Tommy had the best swim coaching possible, and I was going to ensure that Sarah was cut out of the picture in a way that would make her realize what she had lost. It was a cold decision, but I was tired of being the victim. I started researching the best swim coaches in the area. The next day, I took Tommy to a different swim club across town, one that had a stellar reputation and produced champions. I wanted to show Sarah that I could provide our son with everything he needed to succeed, and maybe even teach her a lesson in the process. As I watched Tommy dive into the pool, I felt a flicker of hope. This was my chance to pivot from pain to purpose. I would be the dad he needed, and in doing so, I would find my own strength again. Now I was ready to implement my plan. It wasn't just about revenge. It was about reclaiming my life and ensuring my son thrived. I would not let Sarah's choices dictate our future. This was just the beginning. The days following my confrontation with Sarah were tense and filled with an unspoken cloud of resentment. I could feel her watching me, waiting for me to falter, to show any sign of weakness. But I had made my decision. There was no going back to the way things were before. I wasn't going to let her betrayal consume me. Instead, I was going to focus on Tommy and his future. I immersed myself in the new swim club. The head coach, Coach Daniels, was a former Olympic swimmer with a no-nonsense approach. He immediately recognized Tommy's potential and took him under his wing. Watching my son flourish in the pool was a balm to my wounded heart. Each time Tommy glided through the water, I felt a surge of pride. He was thriving, and that was all that mattered to me. Meanwhile, I maintained a facade of normalcy at home. Sarah would still cook dinner and help Tommy with his homework, but the atmosphere was thick with tension. I could tell she was trying to reach out, but I was emotionally unreachable. Each time she attempted to initiate a conversation, I brushed her off. I was no longer interested in her explanations or excuses. I had a new focus. After a couple of weeks, Sarah decided she wanted to attend one of Tommy's swim meets. I had mixed feelings about it. On one hand, I wanted my son to have both parents cheering him on. On the other hand, I didn't want to give Sarah any opportunity to worm her way back into my good graces. I finally decided that it was best for Tommy. So I agreed, but made sure to keep my distance during the meet. When the day arrived, the pool was buzzing with excitement. Parents were cheering, kids were diving in, and I felt a sense of community among the other families. Tommy was excited, and that was all I cared about. As he swam, I found my heart swelling with pride. He was doing so well under Coach Daniels. But then I spotted Sarah talking to Matt on the sidelines. My stomach twisted. Their interaction was casual, but I could see the familiarity between them. She was laughing, her body language relaxed, as if nothing had happened between them. It fueled a fire in me. I had to remind myself that I was in control and I couldn't let her actions dictate my mood. After the meet, Tommy beamed as he showed us his ribbon for placing second. "Did you see me, Dad? I was so fast," he exclaimed. I hugged him tightly, feeling his joy wash over me. But then I looked at Sarah, who had switched from proud mom to sulking wife. "Great job, buddy," she said, her smile a bit forced. I could see her glancing at me, searching for approval, but I couldn't give it to her. It felt like a hollow victory. I wanted her to feel the weight of her choices, to understand that what she did had consequences. As the weeks progressed, I could sense Sarah's frustration growing. She tried harder to reclaim the affection we once had, but I was closed off. I had set my sights on a new path, and it didn't include her. It was painful to see how much she wanted things to go back to normal, but I was resolute. One evening, while I was tucking Tommy into bed, he looked up at me with his innocent eyes. "Dad, are you and Mom going to fight forever?" he asked softly. My heart sank. I didn't want to burden him with our issues, but I also knew I couldn't lie. I took a deep breath, searching for the right words. "No, buddy. Sometimes adults go through rough patches, but it will be okay," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. I could see the confusion in his eyes, but he nodded as if accepting my answer. It was a bittersweet moment. I didn't want to hurt him, but I also didn't want him to grow up thinking that love meant accepting betrayal. That weekend, I took Tommy to the pool for practice, and as we arrived, I saw Sarah's car parked outside. My heart raced. I assumed she had come to watch him again. When I walked in, I spotted her standing with Matt. They were too close for comfort, and an anger I thought had simmered down flared back up. "Hey, you made it," Tommy shouted as he ran over to her. I approached, keeping my composure, but my insides were churning. "What are you doing here?" I snapped, the question slipping out before I could stop it. Sarah's expression shifted from surprise to irritation. "I wanted to support our son, Jake." "Is that such a crime?" Matt stood awkwardly, clearly caught in the middle of our tension. "I can take Tommy for the warm-up if you want," Matt offered, trying to defuse the situation. I shot him a glare that made it clear I didn't want him anywhere near my son. "No, I'll be with him," I said firmly. Tommy, blissfully unaware of the brewing storm, bounced off to join his teammates. I turned back to Sarah. "You've got no right to act like everything's fine. I see you with him. Just stop pretending." Her face flushed with anger. "You don't understand. He's been a great coach. I'm just trying to support Tommy." "Support him, or support your own guilt," I shot back, my voice rising. She tried to maintain her composure, but I could see her fighting back tears. I didn't care. I wanted her to feel the weight of her actions. "You think you can just come back into our lives and act like nothing happened? You betrayed me, and I'm not just going to sweep it under the rug." The tension hung thick in the air as I turned away, my heart racing. I felt a mix of empowerment and rage, and I knew I was still just getting started with my plan. This wouldn't be over until Sarah understood what she had lost. As I sat on the bleachers, watching Tommy practice, I felt a strange sense of clarity. I wasn't just fighting for revenge. I was fighting for my son's future and my own dignity. I would keep pushing forward, no matter the cost. The days turned into weeks, and I felt more resolute in my decision to distance myself from Sarah. Each time I saw her trying to use Tommy as a bridge to reconnect, it only fueled my determination to cut her out of our lives as much as possible. I was done playing the victim. I was now on a mission. With Tommy thriving in his new swim environment, I began to take on more of the supportive dad role. I started attending every practice, cheering louder than ever, and becoming friends with the other parents. It felt good to be part of this new community, and it made me realize how important it was for Tommy to see me happy and engaged. This was the life I wanted, one filled with positivity, support, and success for my son. However, Sarah wasn't going to let me go that easily. She continued to show up at swim meets, her expressions a mix of determination and desperation. It was clear that she was trying to win back my affection. She would come over after practice, asking about Tommy's progress, but I kept my responses curt, maintaining a wall between us. One Friday evening, as we were leaving practice, I overheard a conversation between two of the other parents, Linda and Mark. "Did you hear about the coach? There are rumors about him and Sarah," Linda said, her voice low but full of intrigue. My ears perked up. I was already familiar with the rumors surrounding Matt thanks to whispers from other parents. "Yeah, I saw them together the other day. It seemed too cozy," Mark responded. "I can't believe she would do that, especially with someone so young. It's just unprofessional." It took everything in me not to confront them right then and there. I could feel my blood boiling. Matt was supposed to be a mentor for Tommy, not a source of drama in our lives. But at the same time, I realized that the gossip could be a useful tool for me. If others were talking about Sarah's behavior, it could influence how she was perceived, especially in the context of her relationship with Matt. That night, I formulated a plan. I would use the gossip to my advantage while solidifying my position as the supportive father. I started casually mentioning what I had heard to other parents in the community, framing it not as gossip but as genuine concern for Tommy. I could see the wheels turning in their heads. The more they talked, the more they would start to see Sarah in a different light. The following week at the next swim meet, I noticed the atmosphere had shifted slightly. Parents were whispering and glancing at Sarah, who was trying to maintain her composure. I felt a sense of satisfaction knowing the tide was turning. It wasn't just about revenge. It was about showing Sarah that her actions had consequences. As I sat in the bleachers, I watched Tommy swim. He was so focused, so determined to improve. I couldn't help but cheer loudly for him, drowning out the noise around me. For every cheer, I watched Sarah's expression change from annoyance to embarrassment. I was reclaiming my role as a dedicated father, and it felt empowering. After the meet, Sarah approached me, her expression tight. "You're really digging deep, aren't you, trying to turn everyone against me?" she accused, crossing her arms defensively. I didn't hold back. "You brought this on yourself, Sarah. You think you can cheat on me and waltz back into my life as if nothing happened. You're the one making this a public spectacle." Her face flushed with indignation. "I'm trying to be a good mother," she shot back. "You're the one making it difficult. You're punishing me for a mistake." I felt an anger brewing inside me. "A mistake? Is that what you call it? You decided to sleep with our son's coach. That's not a mistake, that's a choice." She looked shocked for a moment, then her expression hardened. "You're being dramatic. You don't understand what I've been going through. You've shut me out completely." I shook my head. "You don't get to play the victim here. You made your choices, and now I'm making mine." That night I went home feeling a mixture of anger and relief. I was standing my ground, showing her that I wouldn't be pushed around and that I wasn't going to let her manipulate the situation. The next day, I decided to take it one step further. I called a meeting with Coach Daniels. I wanted to discuss Tommy's progress, but I also needed to ensure that Matt was kept at a distance. I didn't want him near my son, especially not under the guise of mentorship. When I met with Coach Daniels, I was surprised by how supportive he was. "I understand your concerns, Jake. Tommy is doing great and I want what's best for him. I'll make sure Matt keeps his distance. We take these rumors seriously, and I appreciate you bringing it to my attention." I left that meeting feeling empowered. I was taking control of my son's future. It was no longer just about revenge. It was about protecting him from the toxic environment Sarah had created. As I drove home, I realized that I was no longer looking for validation or approval from Sarah. I was finding strength in my role as a father, and I was committed to ensuring Tommy had the best opportunities possible. It was a long road ahead, but I was ready to face whatever challenges came my way. I was no longer the man she could easily manipulate. I was a father fighting for his son's future, and I was prepared to win. The weeks rolled on, and I felt like I was finally in control of my life again. Tommy was flourishing in his swimming, and I was relishing my role as a supportive dad. I had cultivated a small network of friends among the other parents, and we started organizing swim team events and outings. It felt good to have a sense of community, a stark contrast to the loneliness I had felt during the chaos of my marriage. But Sarah continued to be a thorn in my side. Despite the distance I had put between us, she would still try to engage in small talk, asking about Tommy's performances or trying to bring up mundane family matters. Each time she spoke to me, I felt a mix of anger and sadness. I wanted to scream at her, to remind her of what she had done, but I had learned to hold my tongue. I was no longer going to let her manipulate my feelings. One afternoon, while we were at a swim event, I overheard another parent, Corinne, talking about how Sarah had been seen out with Matt again. "I can't believe she would still be with him after everything that's happened," Corinne said, shaking her head. "Doesn't she realize how it looks?" I felt a sense of vindication. Even the other parents were starting to see Sarah for who she really was. I had been right to distance myself from her. I could feel the tide turning, and it was empowering. However, I was not prepared for what happened next. Later that week, I received a call from Coach Daniels. "Jake, I think we need to talk," he said, his tone serious. I immediately sensed something was off. When I arrived at the swim club, he was waiting for me, looking concerned. "It's about Sarah," he began. "There have been complaints from other parents regarding her behavior. I want to ensure that this environment remains positive for the kids." I felt a knot tighten in my stomach. "What kind of behavior?" "Some parents have expressed concern that she's been overly involved with Matt and it's starting to affect the team's morale. I just want to make sure we're doing right by Tommy and the other kids," Coach Daniels explained. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. This was the opportunity I had been waiting for, a chance to address Sarah's actions directly. "Look, she's not just being overly involved, she's crossed lines. She's been unfaithful and it's affecting our family," I said, keeping my voice steady. "I understand that and I'm sorry you're going through this," he replied, sympathetic. "We want to make sure she's not putting the kids in the middle of this. Would you be okay if I spoke to her about maintaining boundaries?" "Absolutely," I said, feeling relief wash over me. This was a step toward protecting Tommy from the fallout of Sarah's choices. The next day I picked Tommy up from practice, and as we were walking to the car, he looked up at me with his big, curious eyes. "Dad, can you promise me something?" "Sure, buddy. What do you need?" "Can we keep swimming fun? I don't want it to be like before when Mom would get all upset," he said, his voice small. I felt a pang in my heart. "Of course, Tommy, we're going to keep it fun. It's all about enjoying the sport and making friends." That night I made a mental note to keep things light. I started planning weekend outings, trips to the park, movie nights, anything that would help Tommy feel secure and happy. I wanted to create a buffer, a safe space where he didn't have to worry about the chaos surrounding us. But Sarah was relentless. She started showing up more frequently at Tommy's practices, and every time I felt my blood pressure rise. She would smile and wave at the other parents, acting as if everything was completely normal. I knew it was just a facade, but I had to keep my cool for the sake of Tommy. One Saturday, I watched as Sarah approached me after practice. "Can we talk?" she asked, her tone more serious than usual. I braced myself. About what? More excuses. Jake, this isn't just about us anymore. It's about Tommy, she said, her voice softer. I want to be a part of his life and I want to help him. Can we stop fighting? I felt a mix of emotions bubbling inside. Part of me wanted to scream at her to remind her of the betrayal, but another part, the part that wanted to protect Tommy, wondered if it was possible to find common ground. You need to understand, Sarah, that you can't just waltz back in after what you've done. It's not that easy, I replied, trying to keep my voice steady. I know I messed up, but I want to make it right. I want to be there for Tommy, she insisted, her eyes pleading. Then show me, I said, crossing my arms. Stop being so involved with Matt. Keep your distance and let's focus on Tommy. That's what really matters. She nodded, though I could see the frustration behind her eyes. I'll do my best, Jake, I really will. As she walked away, I felt a flicker of hope. Perhaps we could find a way to co-parent without tearing each other apart. But just as I thought we were making progress, I received a call from Coach Daniels the following week. Jake, I think we need to address this situation with Sarah directly, he said. I've had several parents come to me about their concerns and we need to set some boundaries. I agree, I said, my heart racing. I don't want her to undermine Tommy's experience. If it continues, I'll have to take it further. I understand. I'll arrange a meeting with her to discuss this, Coach Daniels replied. The irony of it all wasn't lost on me. Here I was, trying to protect my son from the fallout of his mother's choices, while she continued to dig her own grave. I had no idea how this would end, but I was determined to ensure that Tommy emerged unscathed. As I hung up the phone, I realized that the battle was far from over. But I was ready. I wouldn't back down. I'd fight for my son's happiness with every ounce of strength I had left. Each day brought new challenges, but I was committed to ensuring that Tommy would thrive, no matter what it took. The tension between Sarah and me reached a boiling point as the swim season progressed. Coach Daniels had organized a meeting with Sarah, and I was anxious to see how it would unfold. I didn't want to put Tommy in the middle of our conflict, but I knew something had to be done to curb her increasingly toxic behavior. The day of the meeting arrived, and I felt a knot forming in my stomach as I walked into the swim club. I arrived early and found Coach Daniels already waiting in his office. Thanks for coming, Jake. I know this is a tough situation, he said, looking serious. Yeah, I just don't want this affecting Tommy's enjoyment of swimming, I replied. He loves it and I want to keep it that way. Absolutely, that's the priority here. I'll talk to Sarah about keeping her distance from Matt and focusing on Tommy's progress, Coach Daniels said. Just then, Sarah walked in, her face a mix of determination and defiance. I could see she had prepared for this meeting. What's going on? She asked before taking a seat. Thanks for joining us, Sarah. We wanted to discuss some concerns that have been raised about the environment at the swim club, Coach Daniels began. What about it? She snapped, crossing her arms. Several parents have mentioned that they're worried about the influence of personal relationships on the team dynamics, particularly your interactions with Matt, Coach Daniels said, maintaining his calm demeanor. That's ridiculous, she exclaimed. I'm just trying to support Tommy, and if I happen to be friendly with Matt, what's wrong with that? I could see Coach Daniels trying to keep his composure. It's not about being friendly, Sarah. It's about maintaining a positive atmosphere for the kids. They should not be caught in the middle of adult issues. We need to focus on Tommy. I could see Sarah's frustration mounting, but she kept her tone measured. I'm not the one causing problems here. Jake is the one who's been distant and cold. I felt the heat rising in my chest. This isn't about me, Sarah. It's about Tommy. You need to realize how your choices have affected him. Don't pretend you're the perfect parent, Jake, she shot back, her voice rising. You think you can just cut me out of our son's life because of a mistake? You're being petty. I'm being a father who wants to protect his son, I replied firmly. You need to understand that your actions have consequences, and if that means setting boundaries, then so be it. The meeting continued with Sarah trying to shift the blame, but Coach Daniels remained steadfast. He laid down the law, emphasizing the importance of keeping personal issues out of the swim environment. I could see Sarah struggling to grasp the situation. She wanted to maintain her connection with Matt, but the reality was sinking in. Her choices had repercussions beyond our marriage. Finally, Coach Daniels concluded, "I think it's clear that we all want what's best for Tommy. Sarah, I need you to commit to focusing solely on his progress and stepping back from your relationship with Matt during swim activities." Sarah's expression shifted from defiance to something softer, a hint of sadness. "Fine," she said, her voice almost a whisper. "I'll do what you ask for Tommy." As we left the meeting, I felt a mix of relief and uncertainty. Maybe this was a turning point. At least for now, Sarah seemed willing to put Tommy's needs first. But I knew it wouldn't last forever. The next few weeks passed with a newfound sense of stability. Sarah kept her distance from Matt during practices, and I noticed a positive change in Tommy. He was more relaxed, more engaged. He even placed first in his next swim meet, and we celebrated with ice cream afterward, just the two of us. But just as things started feeling normal again, Sarah dropped a bombshell. One afternoon, she called me, her voice shaky. "Jake, I need to talk to you. It's important." I felt a wave of anxiety wash over me. "What is it?" "It's about Matt. I've been seeing him behind your back. It just happened. I'm so sorry," she said, her voice breaking. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "You were supposed to be focusing on Tommy, you promised." "I know I messed up. I thought I could handle it, but I can't," she said. "I need help, Jake." "Help? You think I'm going to help you after everything?" I shot back, my anger boiling over. "You've made your choices, Sarah. You need to face them." "I didn't want it to happen. It just did," she cried. I took a deep breath, trying to rein in my emotions. "You think this is just some mistake? You're playing with people's lives here, Tommy's life. You need to figure this out on your own. Please just listen to me," she pleaded. "I'll end it with Matt. I want to focus on our family. I'll do whatever it takes to make this right." I felt a mix of anger and sadness. "You've lost the right to make promises, Sarah. I'm protecting Tommy, and if that means we have to go our separate ways, then so be it." After hanging up, I felt a surge of clarity. I wouldn't allow her actions to dictate my life any longer. I would focus on Tommy, and I would do everything in my power to ensure he remained unaffected by Sarah's chaos. At the next swim meet, I watched Tommy swim with determination, and as he splashed through the water, I felt a sense of peace wash over me. I was doing the right thing by putting him first. Whatever happened with Sarah, I had to remind myself that I was a good father, and I would always fight for Tommy's happiness. I realized that the path ahead would be challenging, but I was ready for it. I wouldn't let Sarah's choices pull me down. Instead, I would elevate Tommy, ensuring he had everything he needed to thrive, both in swimming and in life. I was committed to being the father he deserved, regardless of the chaos surrounding us. As I cheered for Tommy, I felt a renewed sense of purpose. My son's success was my victory, and I was going to make sure he reached for the stars. The aftermath of Sarah's confession hit hard. It was one thing to suspect infidelity, but having her admit to it was a whole different level of betrayal. I felt a mixture of anger and disappointment, but more than anything, I felt a deep resolve to protect Tommy from the fallout of her choices. In the following days, Sarah tried to reach out. She texted me several times, pleading for a chance to fix things. "I'll end it with Matt," she promised again. "I want to be the mother Tommy deserves." Each message felt like a dagger in my heart. I wanted to believe her, but trust was a fragile thing, and she had shattered it. One evening, as I sat at the kitchen table going through Tommy's schoolwork, I received another call from Sarah. "Can we meet? I need to talk face to face," she insisted. I hesitated, but eventually agreed. I figured that if I was going to navigate this mess, I needed to hear her out one last time. We decided to meet at a small cafe near the swim club, a neutral ground where we could talk without the distractions of our home. When I arrived, I found her sitting at a table by the window, looking anxious. She had that familiar pleading look in her eyes. As I sat down, I felt a rush of conflicting emotions, old memories of our relationship mixed with the reality of what she had done. "Jake, I'm really sorry for everything," she began, her voice shaky. "I messed up, and I don't expect you to forgive me right away, but I want to make it right for Tommy. He deserves parents who can work together." "What do you mean by make it right?" I asked, trying to keep my tone even. "You've already crossed lines that can't be uncrossed." I know, she admitted, tears welling in her eyes. I'm willing to go to counseling to get help. I want to fix this, for Tommy's sake. I realize now how much I've hurt you both. Counseling is a start, I said cautiously. But you need to understand that this isn't just about making promises, it's about actions. You need to show me that you can change. I will, she said, her voice earnest. I promise I'll cut off all ties with Matt and focus on our family. I've seen how well Tommy is doing, and I don't want to ruin that. I can't lose him over my mistakes. I felt a glimmer of hope mixed with skepticism, but I also recognized the importance of giving her an opportunity to prove herself. If we're going to do this, I said, it starts with complete transparency. No more secrets. If I see any indication that you're slipping back into old habits, I won't hesitate to protect Tommy. I won't let him be a casualty in this. Agreed, she said, nodding earnestly. I'll do whatever it takes. As we talked, I couldn't help but feel a flicker of the connection we once had. But I quickly reminded myself that trust takes time to rebuild. I had my doubts, but maybe, just maybe, this was a turning point. Over the next few weeks, Sarah began to show signs of change. She enrolled in counseling and made a concerted effort to be more present in Tommy's life. She attended his swim practices, cheered loudly at meets, and even volunteered to help with team events. While there were still moments of tension between us, I began to see glimpses of the woman I had once loved. Tommy seemed happier, and that was my primary focus. He loved having both of us around, and I could see the relief in his eyes when he saw us working together. I started to believe that perhaps we could find a way to co-parent despite the history of hurt and betrayal. However, my resolve to remain vigilant never wavered. I kept an open line of communication with Coach Daniels, who assured me that he would keep an eye on the relationship dynamics among the team. I knew that I had to be proactive to prevent any setbacks. One Saturday, Tommy had a big swim meet coming up. As we prepared, Sarah and I worked together to get him ready. We packed his gear, made sandwiches, and even managed to share a few light-hearted moments. I could see how much Tommy appreciated the cooperation. At the meet, Tommy swam with all his heart, and I cheered for him, feeling a swell of pride. After he finished, he beamed with joy as he ran over to us. "Did you see that? I think I did my best," he exclaimed, his face glowing. We both knelt down to congratulate him, and in that moment I felt a sense of unity with Sarah. "You did amazing, buddy," I said, pulling him into a hug. Sarah joined us, and for a fleeting second I felt like we were a family again. But then, as we walked away from the pool, I noticed Sarah's phone buzzing incessantly. She looked at it, her expression changing. "It's Matt," she said, her voice tense. I thought I'd blocked his number. I felt my heart sink. "You need to handle this," I said firmly, trying to keep my composure. "Now." With shaking hands, she picked up her phone. "I'll tell him to stop contacting me," she said, but I could see the fear etching her face. "Do it now, Sarah," I insisted. "You can't let this linger." She took a deep breath and began typing, but I could feel the weight of uncertainty between us. Would she truly cut him out of her life, or would the past come creeping back in? As she sent the message, I felt a mix of hope and apprehension. I wanted to believe in her commitment to change, but I knew that faith needs to be earned, with actions over time. The road ahead would be long, but I was prepared to navigate it for Tommy's sake. I had learned that love isn't just a feeling, it's a choice, an action taken every day. And I was committed to making the right choices, for Tommy, for myself, and maybe even for Sarah if she truly had changed. As we drove home, I glanced at Tommy in the rearview mirror, his eyes sparkling with excitement. I realized that no matter what happened with Sarah, my priority was clear: to build a future filled with love, support, and encouragement for my son. Whatever challenges lay ahead, I was ready to face them head-on, ensuring that Tommy's happiness would always be my ultimate victory.